Good morning. I hope we're running. I think we're on right now. If I could see a couple little comments to see if we are indeed going. Well, I am not sure, but I'm going to go ahead. Well, hi Mary. Mary's waving, so I guess at least she can hear me. As you can see, I'm kind of dressed up this morning. Well, later on, just as almost as soon as this is over, I'm going to be doing a Zoom interview. Uh, and so I wanted to look my best. So that's why I'm so dressed up this morning. We're continuing on with a new little installment from Ask Baba Lon, uh, Answers to Questions of Life and Magic. Now remember, this whole thing is published 10 years ago, and the letters that I'm answering, the letters that people sent me and that I'm answering, some of them are over 30 years old. So as I said at the very beginning, some of my answers have evolved and even reversed over the years, but I left them as is. But also keep that in mind when you hear my answers about specific things, and I'll mention from time to time if my attitudes have changed too drastically. But anyway, here I'm answering a letter, and I titled the letter, I Want to Convert My Local Church Leader to Thelema. And I've got a little note. For the purposes of illustration, I have left the spelling, punctuation, and grammar uncorrected. Now, I didn't do this to be mean, okay? I did this in this particular case because certain things, the spelling and punctuation is very important, and I pointed out in my answer. Dear Baba Lon, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And every one of the words is capitalized, first caps. And there's a comma after wilt. I'll mention it in a minute. Dear Baba Lon, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I've read Crowley's letters to Henry Ford and his method of Thelema. So Crowley wrote a letter to Henry Ford and about his method of Thelema, which seems to indicate that it is necessary to promulgate the law by writing to industrialists, bankers, scientists, and politicians and the likes. I would include leaders of local old Aeon churches. The idea being to persuade them by using examples from their own fields, be it mathematical proofs or Bible scriptures, then support the law of Thelema and show it has a solid foundation and practical benefits. Okay. Why is it that I get so much opposition when I do this from both the recipient of my letter as well as from other Thelemites who claim such letters hurt the cause? Love is the law, love under will. All words have first caps. Name withheld. Dear name withheld. Let me begin by pointing out the correct pronunciation and capitalization. Oh, excuse me. Let me let me begin by pointing out the correct punctuation and capitalization of "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," as found in Liber Al Vel Legis, the Book of the Law. By the wording in your letter, it is unclear to me if you are contacting great industrialists, bankers, scientists, and politicians, or if you are writing only to leaders of your local old Aeon churches. I'm assuming that you are mostly engaged in contacting the latter. Forgive me if I'm mistaken. I don't know the reason you are getting opposition to this idea from other Thelemites, but everyone is, of course, entitled to his or her own view on the matter. I think it's a good idea in principle, and in application, a worthy effort for a knowledgeable and eloquent champion of Thelema who truly believes himself or herself up to the task of winning over through charm, tact, logic, and common sense, a person who has completely surrendered logic and common sense to dictate his or her life to the soul suicide insanity that is the very essence of Crizzle Mu thought. Crizzle Mu is Christian, Muslim, and Jewish. Crizzle Mu. Rubbing their noses in how stupid they are probably won't win them over. That's why Crowley mentioned industrialists, bankers, scientists, and politicians, and the likes. Because these people, while many of them may be assholes, are not stupid. Their success and their power prove they are likely at least 90% Thelemites to start with. These are people who have proven they know how to, at least on the material plane, discover and do their will. Their success in causing change to occur in conformity with their will makes them pretty damn good magicians, too. That's who Crowley wanted to go after. Powerful individuals who, if properly approached, would be brilliant enough to recognize a good thing when they see it. Not some loser clergyman or will-less spider professors preaching to a choir of their same ilk in their sunless cloisters. The big fish are not caught with a net of mathematical proofs or Kabbalistic arguments of old Aeon scripture, but they are drawn into the greater sea by the impulse of their own will. That is most likely to happen if they find themselves attracted to Thelema by a successful and compelling example of a Thelemite they admire, someone they might wish to emulate. These, of course, are only my personal opinions, and my opinions can change many times an hour. If you're being criticized for your efforts, try to be honest with yourself and consider what your critics are saying or trying to say to you. But if you truly can't see the wisdom in the criticism and know yourself to be right, then F them. I doubt you can ultimately hurt the cause of Thelema too badly. Love is the law, love under will, Babylon. P.S. Again, please note the proper capitalization and punctuation of our Thelemic greetings taken from Liber Al Vel Legis. If you're going to do intellectual combat in the cause of Thelema against the Crizzle Mu clergy, you might want to emblazon your battle standard with a correctly spelled slogan. And that's the end of that letter. The next letter I've entitled, Do I Have to Practice Magic to be a Thelemite? Dear Baba Lon, I was introducing a friend of mine to some thelemic work a few days ago, and he asked a question I didn't have a clear answer to. So, do you have to practice magic to be a Thelemite? I mentioned that a Thelemite is one who accepts the law and is actively pursuing the discovery of one's true will. The comedic difficulty came in his response. Oh, all right. Then what's the real point in doing it? I mean, I like Thelema, but I don't see a reason to go through all this really hard material to find my true will. And then you have to the whole hierarchy thing with the AA and the OTO, unquote. He goes on. I explained, of course, that the great work can be done as an individual, just as you had said. However, I was still left with the inability to understand how oftentimes difficult study, Kabbalah, Enochian, and just about any other practice with its heavy doses of symbolism, is really sensible in finding the true will. Any advice here? Thanks in advance. Sincerely, name withheld. Dear name withheld. In my opinion, in order to personally and privately, though when you think of it, existence itself is personal and private, in order to personally and privately consider oneself a Thelemite, it is not at all necessary to practice any of the techniques of magic, belong to any initiatory society, or subscribe to or enmesh oneself in the study of any religion, doctrine, or philosophy other than that of seeking to discover and then do one's will. I think it's safe to say that by this definition, most people on the planet who are successfulely discovering and executing their wills and do not realize, nor do they need to, that they are Thelemites, or that there is a name for what they are, or what they were doing is magic in the highest order. It doesn't matter if they consider themselves Christian, Jew, Muslim, or atheist. If they discovered and are doing their wills, they're really Thelemites deep down. After all, the statement is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, not know what thou wilt, or learn what thou wilt, or study what thou wilt, or fantasize what thou wilt, or identify oneself as thou wilt. That being said, it's also my opinion that in order to publicly and purposefully identify oneself as a Thelemite and represent oneself as an adherent to the religious philosophy known to the world since 1904 as Thelema, one need only accept Liber Al Vel Legis, the Book of the Law, without wishing to make changes in it, and be engaged in a perpetual process of living life as much as possible according to one's current comprehension of the text. That being said, it is my opinion that if one perceives it to be one's will to embark consciously upon the step-by-step path of spiritual initiation, the path followed by aspirants and holy men and women of every age, it is vitally important, as it has always been, to attune the process with a spiritual formula that is presently in harmony with humanity's current level of consciousness. However, this is done need not be that difficult. In fact, the easiest way to understand the nature of the present formula is by studying the formula of the past as expressed in religious and magical rituals. This is what connects the law of Felima to personal initiation and magical practices. One of the greatest gifts Aleister Crowley bequeaths to humanity is a body of rituals and mystical literature built upon the initiatory formula of the past, but now tweaked to bring them in line with the formula of the new aeon. To identify as a Thelemite at this level, one must be like a Tibetan monk on the path to lamahood. Perform the disciplines, do the homework, study the literature, do the rituals, and live the life, until such time as one becomes an integral part, expression, and manifestation of the formula itself. I hope this has been helpful. Baba Lon. And finally, for today's, and this is the little note that I put up when I reminded us of our 10 o'clock appointment this morning. Can you sum up Felima and Crowley for the layman? Dear Baba Lon, how would you describe Felima to the layman? If I had no occult knowledge and was looking into the religion for the first time and asked you to sum it up for me, what would you say? And how would you sum up Crowley to those unaware of who he was? Thank you. Name withheld. Dear name withheld, sum up Felima and Crowley? Damn, you're not asking for much this morning. Look, the only thing any of us knows for sure about ourselves is that we currently exist and that we are here. Most of us also have an abiding conviction that, for reasons beyond our current ability to comprehend, our present individual existence is somehow a correct phenomenon in the greater scheme of things. Otherwise, why would we struggle so passionately to preserve and prolong our existence? Are you with me so far? Without presuming to speculate unduly why we exist, why we are here, or why this is probably correct, Felima recognizes each individual's place in and potential contribution to the universe as a whole. Felima then goes on to posit that it's the duty of each one of us to discover what our unique potential contribution really is. In Felima, this duty is called will. Once we discovered what that duty is, or at least get a glimpse of what it might be, it then becomes imperative that we fulfill that duty, just like a planet or an electron in its proper orbit, and make that contribution to the universe, which we are a necessary part. In Felima, we call this doing one's will. Still follow me? Obviously, Discovering and executing our will can be a difficult process. But so is living. So is living a life guided by any other philosophical or religious program. What makes Felima unique is that it treats the individual as the basic unit of society, responsible entirely for his or her own reality. For as I said, the only thing any of us knows is that we currently exist and that we're here. How would I sum up Crowley to those unaware of who he was? I would simply say that Crowley was an extremely eccentric and controversial holy man of the 20th century. His theories on the nature of human consciousness are viewed by many as mystical pre-echoes of the revelations of modern quantum mechanics and astrophysics. For this, his followers hail him as the prophet of the new aeon. I hope this has been helpful. Baba Lon. And I think that's where we'll stop today. Tomorrow we'll pick it up with a little section that's headed up, Will the Real AA Please Stand Up? And until tomorrow, I probably won't dress up for tomorrow as much as I am today. I know that will disappoint you. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.